Okay, let's dive into this fascinating set of sources you shared with us.
Right.
We're focusing on just one Premier League match, Tottenham Hotspur versus Brighton.
Yep. Final day of the 2024-25 season.
And our mission, really, using these articles, stats, the analysis here,
Yeah.
it's to unpack what actually happened in that game.
Yeah, look at the key moments and, try to understand what the sources are saying it all means for both clubs right at the end of the season.
Exactly. And the scene the sources set. Well, it's the final match day. Always a bit tense, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Especially with potential European spots maybe still up for grabs.
And this one was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Big crowd, too, the
Yeah,
sources mentioned.
a very big crowd. It says 61,449 fans were there.
Wow. Okay.
And Robert Jones was the referee for the day.
Right. So let's get straight to it then, because the final score, well, it was pretty surprising, wasn't it? Especially considering how it started.
It really was. Defied that early part of the game. The source clearly states Tottenham Hotspur 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 4.
1-4. On the final day at home. Okay, so how do we get there? Let's walk through the goals, the key moments from the reports.
Well, Tottenham actually went ahead first, pretty early on, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the sources say 17th minute, Dominic Solanke. Penalty?
Penalty, right. And the report gives the reason Matt's Weifer fouling Mathis Tell inside the area.
That's what it says, yeah. Foul, penalty, Solanke converts. Spurs 1-0 up.
So far, so good for Spurs, you'd think.
You would. But the whole story of the match, according to these sources, it just completely flipped in the second half.
Okay.
Brighton's comeback kicked off 51st minute, Jack Hinshelwood.
Hinshelwood. I remember reading in the sources, didn't he score their winner against Liverpool just before this?
He did, yeah, clearly ending the season on a high. And he wasn't done there either.
No.
No, just, 13 minutes later?
Yeah.
64th minute? Source says Hinshelwood got his second, put Brighton ahead.
And how do they describe that finish?
It calls it an inventive finish.
Inventive. Okay. So 2-1 to Brighton. And they didn't stop there, did they?
No, they pushed on. The third goal came pretty late, 88th minute. Matt O'Reilly scored it. And another penalty.
Another one.
Yep.
What happened there?
The report details that too. Yves Bizuma fouling Diego Gomez. That led to the second spot kick.
Right. Okay. So 3-1.
And then, just to, really put the nail in the coffin, Diego Gomez sealed it. Deep into stoppage time, 90+3.
And how was that goal described? Must have been something.
Oh, yeah. The source calls it a thumping finish, even says stunning long-range finish into the top right corner. Latoma got the assist.
Wow. Stunning is right. A 4-1 away win. Sealed like that. Now, the sources mentioned other key moments too, not just the goals.
Yeah, definitely worth pointing out Bart Verbruggen, the Brighton keeper, made a really crucial save from Mathis Tell just before Brighton got going.
Okay. The source actually called that a key moment.
Explicitly, yeah, key moment. And there was Carlos Baleba hitting the post for Brighton too. Little things.
Could have gone differently on another day.
Exactly. And the sources give a bit more detail on Hinshelwood's goals, too. For the first, it says Adam Webster tried to head a corner from Brajan Gruda, and the ball just sort of fell nicely for Hinshelwood.
A bit fortunate, perhaps.
Seems like it, yeah. And the second one, another Gruda corner, it apparently cannoned off a few players and fell to Hinshelwood again.
And that was the inventive finish.
Yeah, he backheeled it over the line, according to the report. So maybe a touch of luck involved in how the chances came about.
Interesting detail. And the second penalty, the foul by Bissouma on Gomez.
The source attributes that to Gomez making a lung-bursting overlap to get into the position to win the foul.
Right, showing good energy late on. And the fact Gomez and Mitoma were involved in those late goals, that links to the substitutions, doesn't it?
It does. Let's touch on the cards and subs listed in the sources.
Okay, a few yellows handed out. Bentancur, Porro for Spurs.
Yep. Then Veltman for Brighton and Ben Davies for Spurs later on. Standard stuff.
And the subs. Both teams made changes, but Brighton seemed key.
They did. The report highlights several changes Brighton made right at halftime.
Yeah, specifically pointing out Diego Gomez and Kaoru Mitoma came on then.
And like we just said, both directly involved in those late goals, the penalty win, and the final goal and assist.
So it really looks like those halftime changes made a big difference for Brighton. The source even says their performance was even better after the break.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty smart tactical move from Hurzeler based on how it played out and how the source describes it.
Okay, let's shift then. Let's look at the analysis section in the source material, starting with Spurs.
Right, and this part really dives into this sort of debate around the club at that time.
It acknowledges the context first, though Spurs had just won the Europa League final.
Yeah, beat Man United just days before, a big European trophy.
But the source immediately pivots, doesn't it? It says, despite that win, there remains much debate about Ange Postecoglou's position.
Exactly. It uses this specific match, this 4-1 loss, as kind of Exhibit A for that scrutiny.
Right. It says this game again showed why Postecoglou's tenure has at times come under significant scrutiny. Strong words.
That's the core argument the source is making, yeah.
Right.
And it tries to explain why. It does mention some attacking positives, tells footwork, creating chances.
Right.
But the main reason given for what the source calls their woeful Premier League campaign
Woeful campaign.
is the defensive issues at the other end.
And it puts a number on that, doesn't it? A stat.
It does. The source states Spurs conceded 65 goals in the league that season.
65. That's a lot.
A very high number, yeah. And this is where the source presents this really interesting contradiction.
That's it.
It states that despite this difficult league season, Spurs finished in, and I quote, 17th placed finish in the Premier League.
17.
That's what the source says. 17th place.
Yeah.
But we'll still be playing Champions League football next season.
Hold on. 17th place.
Yeah.
But Champions League? How? The source doesn't explain how.
No, it just presents those two facts, 17th place finish, Champions League qualification side by side. Leaves it hanging there. It's quite the paradox presented in the analysis.
Wow. Okay. 17th in Champions League. Definitely food for thought about their season as presented here. Let's switch over to Brighton's analysis then.
Right. So, Brighton. They came into this game 8th in the table.
With a chance for Europe Conference League.
Exactly. And they were coming off that big win the source mentioned, the impressive 3-2 comeback against Liverpool.
So, good momentum, something real to play for, and the source liked their performance here.
Yeah, it notes they started well, but were, as we said, even better after the break. Really emphasizes that second half surge.
And highlights their comeback ability again, just like against Liverpool.
Yep, building on that previous result.
So, great performance, big win.
Yeah.
Did they get that European spot they were hoping for?
Unfortunately for them, no. The source explains that even with the 4-1 win,
Yeah.
they missed out. Chelsea won their game at Nottingham Forest.
Oh, right. So Chelsea took the spot.
Exactly. The source mentions that news of Chelsea's goal filtered through and kind of put a bit of a damper on the celebrations, even though they'd won so well.
Ah, that's tough
Yep.
after playing like that.
It is. But the source does frame the positive side for Brighton. Fabian Hürzeler's team secured 8th place anyway.
And finished strongly.
Yeah, with an impressive run of form, the source calls it. And the analysis ends by saying Hürzeler will be optimistic about challenging for Europe again next season based on this finish.
So disappointment on the day, but optimism for the future for Brighton, according to this. Okay, let's quickly cover some of the broader stats the sources included.
Sure. There's a quick head-to-head Premier League record, 16 meetings overall. Spurs, 9 wins. Brighton, 6, 1 draw.
Okay. And it mentioned recent results favored Brighton.
Yeah, including that 3-2 win they had against Spurs earlier in the same season.
Must have been another exciting game. What about the recent form guide shown in the source?
Yeah, that really paints a picture. For Spurs, leading into this game, the source lists their form as loss, 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 draw, loss.
Ouch.
Yeah, whereas Brighton's is listed as win, 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 draw, win, including this final match.
That's a massive contrast in how they were ending the season. Right there in the numbers.
Huge difference presented, yeah. And the source throws in some season-long player stats, too.
Like top scorers.
Yep. Brennan Johnson for Spurs with 11 league goals. For Brighton, João Pedro and Kaoru Mitoma both on 10.
Okay. And assists. Spurs had creators, right?
Definitely. Source lists Son Heung-min with 9 assists, James Maddison with 7, then João Pedro again for Brighton with 6.
Right. Son and Madison featuring there.
Yeah.
And what about tackles? Any standouts?
Yeah, Carlos Baleba for Brighton leads the way in the sources list with 77 tackles. Then Desinu Dogi for Spurs with 75. Pedro Porro, also Spurs, with 67.
And those are names we heard mentioned in the match details, too. Shows their involvement.
Exactly. The stats kind of back up the narrative bits from the report and analysis in the source material.
Okay, so let's tie this all together, connecting back to you, the listener, who shared these sources. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive, based purely on this material?
Well, I think the sources show Brighton put in a really dominant second half to get that big 4-1 win. But ultimately, it wasn't quite enough for Europe because of results elsewhere.
Oh, for Spurs.
For Spurs, despite that Europa League win just before, and, bizarrely, Champions League qualification, according to the source. This specific loss really highlighted the defensive issues that the source claims plagued their league season, calling it woeful.
Right, so you now have the specifics from these sources, the goal timeline, the key moments like Verbruggen's save, that defensive stat, the analysis points, the debate around Postecoglou, Brighton's near miss, all laid out from the material provided.
It gives you that detailed picture based entirely on what these particular sources reported and analyzed.
Which leads us to one final thought, something for you to chew on, based strictly on what we've unpacked from the source material you gave us.
Go on.
Given that the source explicitly states Tottenham finished 17th in the Premier League, 17th, yet the same source confirms they will be playing Champions League football next season. What does this really unusual situation, as presented right here in the source, actually tell us about their season? And what might it mean for those questions the source says are hanging over the head coach's future?
It's definitely a strange one presented there. 17th place finish and the Champions League. Lots to think about from that source.
Yeah, a unique scenario indeed.
Uh,
Well, thank you for bringing these sources to us for this deep dive into that final day clash and all the surrounding analysis presented. Definitely keep digging into the details that caught your eye.